Hi there guys, I hope you are having a good day. Now Anthony Joshua has explained that it is hard to deal with the fact that there are critics out there who are saying that he's not who he says he is. He's not a legitimate world champion, and all of this criticism that comes with the place he's in, obviously being heavyweight champion of the world. And that got worse after that Andy Ruiz Jr. defeat. Now, Anthony Joshua is a pro boxer, and in boxing, and specifically in the heavyweight division, one punch can change everything. And we saw that when he fought Andy Ruiz Jr. at Madison Square Garden. If you look at the first few rounds, Anthony Joshua was in control. He even dropped Andy Ruiz Jr. But what happened next was a clear demonstration of the fact that any punch, one punch at a time, can change everything. In boxing, in the heavyweight division specifically, it is the division where one shot changes the whole course of the fight, and while that one shot did not necessarily cause a flash knockout and stop Anthony Joshua there and then, it did change the course of the fight, because after that shot, Ruiz was in control. Before that shot, Ruiz was not in control. And if you look at the way the shot landed, Andy Ruiz Jr. throws two hooks. One lands clean on the chin of Anthony Joshua. He takes it. The next shot lands just behind Anthony Joshua's ear, and that completely scrambles the equilibrium of Anthony Joshua, and from that point on, he did not recover. But he took the first shot, so it was just one shot perfectly placed at the perfect time. And if you watch, Anthony Joshua was reaching across. He had just thrown a big shot of his own, and as he was pulling his balance back, that is when the shot landed. So he was coming onto the shot as well, and because that shot was behind the ear, he did not see it coming, whereas the first one that landed on the chin, he did see coming. It's just the speed of Ruiz that he did not account for, the speed where he was able to land two hooks that quickly, one on the chin, one behind the ear. Anthony Joshua did not expect that second shot to come, but it did, and that changed everything. And with that came criticism after that fight, but he redeemed himself. He beat Andy Ruiz Jr. in the rematch, regaining his world championship titles. And let's not forget, Anthony Joshua is only 1 in 4 in history who have ever regained a heavyweight world championship or championships in an immediate rematch alongside Lennox Lewis, Floyd Patterson, and Muhammad Ali. Anthony Joshua is now alongside those names. So even though he has still won, come back and beat Andy Ruiz Jr. in an immediate rematch just 5 or 6 months later, still the criticism remains. Anthony Joshua had this to say when talking about the criticism that he receives. I'm not going to lie and say that I don't pay attention to any of it, because it's impossible not to see the criticism. I started my social media on my own, and even though it has turned into a business page, I still handle a lot of it myself. I think that it's fine to have doubters as long as you don't believe what they are saying the whole time. You have to prove the doubters wrong. When they don't believe, you should always believe. The doubters aren't always bad either. You just have to try and find something positive out of all of it. They might say you're not good enough and you're going to get knocked out because your hands are too low. And I would think that's a good indication that I've got to keep my left hand up. I use the doubters as a positive factor, not as a negative one. I think that it is all about adapting. Different circumstances require different preparation. It was the same war, but I had learned a lot from the first battle. Ruiz isn't the type of fighter that you just go head to head with. For the first fight, I was planning on going in there and trading with him, but there's an old boxing saying, you don't hook with a hooker. So what did I do? I went in there and hooked with the hooker, and the actual hooker came out on top. In the second fight, I went in there and he tried to box with a boxer, and I came out on top. And I had to learn what my strengths were and what his weaknesses were, and then I just boxed to those. That's your basic foundation. Never play to someone else's strengths. In anything you do, everyone has their own strengths. If you play to theirs rather than yours, they are always going to come out better than you in the long run. So there we go, that is what Anthony Joshua has had to say about the fight with Ruiz, the first one and the second one, and the criticism he received from the first one and even the second one. Even after winning, still the criticism remains. And it's going to. There are always going to be doubters. There were doubters before, there are doubters after. No matter what you do, there's a positive opinion, there's a negative opinion, there's a balance. The positive is often bigger than the negative. It is always going to be, hopefully anyway. But ultimately, the negative stuff is kind of hard to ignore, because when you get to that position, heavyweight champion of the world, unified twice, you lose the belts, you win them back. So Anthony Joshua has already had a great career in the sport of boxing and achieved so much. So when you get to that point, I would imagine it's quite hard to see someone still criticizing everything you do, saying that you're not good enough. But I'm guessing what he does is just take the positives from the negatives, because Anthony Joshua has a fight with Kubrat Pulev next, then Alexander Usyk, then a fight with Tyson Fury. So these big fights are happening now for Anthony Joshua. So I guess we can judge what he has done so far, but we cannot judge him based on his whole career, because his whole career has not come to a conclusion yet. He still has some of the biggest fights in his career in front of him. Undisputed or former undisputed cruiserweight champion in Alexander Usyk. Technically brilliant. He has to come through that. Then Tyson Fury, undefeated, has won against Vladimir Klitschko, ending that long reign of 9-10 years, then beating Deontay Wilder, undefeated, biggest knockout puncher in heavyweight history. 10 defenses of the WBC world title, ended that reign as well. So Tyson Fury is there on the horizon for Anthony Joshua. So these big fights are coming up for AJ. He's had big fights before, but these ones are going to get bigger and bigger. So that is why Anthony Joshua cannot listen to the doubters. He can take it on board when it's constructive. When there is constructive criticism, it's always good to take that on board. But when there is outright negativity trying to put Anthony Joshua down and try and push him off course, that is when you have to know when to say, okay, leave that alone. I know it's hard because it's always there, but ultimately, that is what Anthony Joshua is starting to learn how to do. Manage the negativity. Take the good points, turn them into positives, and leave all of the bad points behind. Because as I said before, there are always going to be doubters, especially in the sport of boxing, because in boxing, you lose one fight and all of a sudden, you're no longer good enough. You were a hype job. Then you win a couple of fights and you're back at the top again, but you lose another fight, again, just a hype job. That is the way boxing seems to go. But the thing that is forgotten, some of the best fighters in history, in fact, if you list all of the top 10 fighters ever, how many of them would be undefeated? How many? Maybe one. So the top 10 fighters who have ever lived and ever graced the sport of boxing have lost. And they are living proof that it is not about how you lose, it's about how you come back. It also proves that those fighters have consistently fought the best fighters they can, because you can be the best fighter in the world, but there is one style that does not work for you, one style that is just terrible for yours. Anthony Joshua found that in Andy Ruiz Jr., yet still, he managed to overturn him in the rematch. That style, small, Anthony Joshua does not like small fighters, faster than AJ as well, as I said, those punches that came, those two hooks. First one, AJ saw, the second one, he did not see or anticipate, because Ruiz is so fast. Did not judge the speed of Ruiz. Small, got on the inside, came under those shots, bobbing and weaving. So Anthony Joshua was faced with a style that does not work for his, a style that he is always going to have problems with. Not only that, he went in there looking to trade with him. He went in there underestimating that style, not thinking that this is the style that could be the one to beat me. And ultimately, it was a recipe that caused Anthony Joshua to suffer his first defeat. Yet still, he came back 5 or 6 months later and beat Ruiz, because what he done was used his strengths and exploited Andy Ruiz Jr.'s weaknesses. That is how Anthony Joshua beat the style that he was always going to struggle with. So guys, anyway, what are your thoughts on this? The way Anthony Joshua has been dealing with his criticism, taking the positives from the negatives, and there are doubters, but he takes it as constructive criticism when he can. Moving on, going forward to a Kubrat Pulev fight, to an Alexander Usyk fight, to a Tyson Fury fight. Anyway, guys, drop your thoughts in the comments below, leave a thumbs up and subscribe if you are new. Thank you guys.